Welcome to Leadership Rules, where we believe leadership isn't just a role, it's a way of life. Whether you're leading a team, a community, or simply leading yourself, we're here to help you unlock the rules to lead your life with purpose and impact. I'm Nick Caniglio with Marnie Stockman. We are co-authors of the book Lead It Like Lasso, and we're excited to chat today. Welcome to our podcast.
Today's guest is Scott Aaron. He is a networking and marketing coach with a focus on building brands, specifically on LinkedIn. He's passionate about helping entrepreneurs and coaches by helping them build their networks organically without gross, expensive, or complicated marketing tactics. And his programs have helped thousands scale dramatically. He's got an interesting backstory of resilience, and we are excited to talk to him. All right. So welcome, Scott Aaron.
Hey, Marnie. Hey, Nick. Great to be here and excited for today's conversation.
So I have to say that when you had us at networking, for the record, right? We saw your podcast on networking and marketing made simple. And really, we feel like networking and marketing are two of the key elements for helping folks highlight their best version, which is what we talk about all of the time. So speaking of best version and being Ted Lasso fans, we know you are too, and we like to start off with a little biscuits with the boss icebreaker. So I'm going to ask you a couple rapid fire questions.
Sure.
And there's the telltale smirk. I'm like, oh, I didn't know what I was walking into. So first concert, best concert.
First concert, Gloria Estefan and the Miami Sound Machine when I was 10 years old.
Oh, I feel like I'm done already.
Yeah. So that was my first concert. Best concert. Oh man. So I was a big fish head growing up. So when I did have hair, I had a giant afro and Birkenstocks and hemp everything. And I used to travel around the country seeing them. So I'm kind of privy to say one of my fish shows, but I would say um there was a fish show that I went to. I grew up in Philadelphia. It was before they tore down the Spectrum, which was one of the best places to see a concert just because the acoustics were amazing. And I went with, my best friend Alex and my other best friend Kim and Michelle. The four of us went. We just had a ball, and it was just one of those concerts where they actually opened the concert with a song that they typically close a show with. And you can look up all the stats on the shows, and it was the first time that they opened a show with this song in like over 15 years. So we kind of knew that it was going to be epic, and it ended up being epic. I would say outside of that, um, recently, so I grew up in a very musically eclectic family. My dad, like I have just soul in me, and it's from my dad. He is just a 70s funk person but also like rock and roll. So I loved, getting into Zeppelin and the Doors. But my father got me really into Tower Power and Earth, Wind and Fire, Chicago. And we started making it a family tradition about 15 years ago that whenever Earth, Wind and Fire and Chicago would come to town, we would go see them. And it just so happened it had been a number of years since we saw them. I mean, we took my sister and I took my dad Father's Day 2019 to go see them in Atlantic City. But my son is now at the age where he like is really understanding music, and he loves what I love and he loves what he loves. And I said to him, I'm like, Earth, Wind and Fire in Chicago are coming to Camden. Do you want to go? And we went, and these guys are in their 70s, and the show that they put on, and it was my wife, myself, my son, my sister, my dad, my stepmom, and having three generations there. So like, my dad first starting to go when he was in his 20s, to then taking me to go, and then now, his grandson being there with him. And I remember walking out of the concert, and this was over this past summer. Taylor says to me, he goes, "This is one of the best nights of my life, best concert I've ever seen." And that, like, I mean, chills. We were just sweaty and just had the best time. And even my wife, who hates fish, she will just thinks it's garbage. She has her own likes of music and stuff, and we kind of like some of that stuff as well. But she never really understood why my family loved Earth, Wind, and Fire so much. And when we walked out of that concert, she goes, "Now I get it." She goes, "Now it
Awesome.
makes sense." So very
Awesome.
long-winded, but we're a very musical family, love music. So that was a great opening question.
So that's the second time in the last three of these that somebody said has at least mentioned Chicago. So
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like
They're
I gotta
getting
get
points.
my little Peter Cetera hat on or something.
Yeah,
So
no,
I
and
think
my
that was
son
right.
my son plays the piano and he's actually starting to learn a couple of Chicago songs too, which is kind of fun.
Nice, nice. Okay, some quick hitters. Coffee or tea?
Coffee. I need the caffeine. I mean, even though tea does have caffeine, but I like my lattes.
Fizzy water, like Ted, spit it or sip it. Oh, okay.
Dip it.
All right, dog or cat?
So I grew up a cat person. I had cats my entire life until my wife, she had two dogs, and now we have four. So
You described four that all add up to one medium-sized dog.
that's so yeah, there I have too many, we have too many schnauzers, two chocolate mini schnauzers, Ruby and Moby. And then
Nice.
our the two older guys, Ben is the eldest, he's 13, he's a Beagle ear, Beagle King Charles Cavalier, and then Mort is a couple years younger than him, he's 10. And he is a Jack Russell Dachshund mix. So the four of them equal a large dog, but they're just all. But so now and that's another thing, like how my wife said she understands now about Earth, Wind, and Fire. Now I understand what it's like to have a dog. And so Ruby's mom, like the Schnauzers are like, they love their daddy. Not that they don't
Yeah.
like mommy, but the older guys love mommy. But yeah, I get all the Schnauzer love. So yeah, I get it.
So the last one kind of leads into the conversation, leadership, nature or nurture?
Oof, that's a great question. I would say something my wife and I talk about is that not everything is a straight line. So I'm actually going to say a hybrid of the two because I don't believe in anything in life or in business being a straight line because I feel like there has to be, you know, part nature, part nurture, because there are times in leadership where it's going to require more of one than the other. Just like when my wife and I talk about marketing, it's part science, part art. It's not like all science or all art. So I would say it definitely is a combination of the two. And I think it's moment dependent. So depending upon what is going on, it might require nature, it might require nurture.
So I live in farm country, and the farmers say you get more beans in a crooked row. So you actually get more leadership touch points and not a straight line. So you brought that to the forefront for me.
We have a
So
family farm too, so I get that as well.
you mentioned marketing, like I said, you had us at networking. We work with a lot of authors, book writers, folks who also have master classes. What would you recommend from your perspective as sort of the single most thing that they should do to get brand recognition?
Something that I talk about, we're in like a couples mastermind. So we're in a other couples that are in business together but need kind of like an outlet. And I said to the one person in our mastermind, I said, you have to be unapologetically like over the top visible on social media in the sense of, and I always challenge my wife with this. I said, how are people ever going to know about you and what you do if you never talk about it? So the easiest way to get recognition and visibility is to showcase your skills, what you're good at, but more importantly, the problems that you're looking to solve for the people that you want to work with. And I think people don't recognize the power of social media because it's completely free. You know, when you
Yeah.
open up a Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn account, you don't have to hand them your credit card. It's basically you just have to abide by the user agreements of the platforms and you can put yourself out there. And, you know, I grew up I've been an entrepreneur my entire life, psychologically unemployable since day one. So I've never worked for anyone. I started in a family business when I was 19 years old and a sophomore in college. And this is the back in the day when we used to have door stuffers where we would pay someone to walk around the neighborhood where our gym was, and they would literally stuff brochures in people's door handles when they would open the door that would be there. We also did mailers, which some people still do that. So the change in how someone markets themselves and puts themselves out there to really get that visibility, social media still to this day is something that people are still not leaning enough on. and they're not consistent enough. So one of the first books that I read on my personal development journey about 13 years ago was a book called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Great author. He also wrote a book called The Entrepreneurial Roller Coaster, because that's exactly what it is. What's the first thing that you do when you get on a roller coaster? You pull that harness down and you're going to fly out. But the compound effect, he talks about how one small thing compounds into a bigger thing. And that's what I speak about often, is that you have to treat everything that you do in business, specifically when you're on LinkedIn, like treating it like a 401k. You don't invest time just one day
Yeah.
and expect to have all the money show up in your account. It's those small daily actions each day that create that consistency effect that lead to the compounded effect that is going to create that ultimate visibility and recognition that you're looking for.
You know, I was gonna ask a question about how to stand out, but I think you talked a little bit about the consistency and everything like that. But one thing that we keep hearing a lot recently about LinkedIn, I think one of our connections had put a post out there, just throw the first day of school pictures out there, and it's become Facebook all of a sudden. But there's so much noise right now on LinkedIn. Is there any one specific thing that you should either start doing or stop doing outside of the consistency stuff that you talked about earlier on LinkedIn to kind of, you know, allow yourself to stand out from the crowd and not just be part of the noise?
Well, I would say we could do a whole episode just on this, but I would say anything that you personally would do on Facebook and Instagram, don't do it on LinkedIn, because people are gonna try to convince you that it's like Facebook, it's like Instagram, right? So I just spoke to someone that actually works in the B2B sector of LinkedIn last week. We just had just an offline private conversation. And he said that's one of the biggest things right now, is that there's a lot of quote unquote influencers on there that are trying to make it something that it isn't. LinkedIn, from a foundational standpoint, is where people should be networking, connecting, sharing business, referring business, and helping people move their business forward with education and information. And it's not to say I don't care about people's first day of pictures for school and stuff, but that's for your friends and family. You
Yeah.
know, I'm a big believer in, you have to keep the mystery or the privacy of one's life to your liking. Now, I'm an open book when I do podcasts, and people can see a lot of my personal side of my life and what I do on Facebook. I rarely bleed that into my LinkedIn strategy, because my personal brand is different on that platform. I'm a LinkedIn educator and LinkedIn coach. So all of my strategy is, what value added tips can I give my audience that's going to bring up the level of know, like, and trust. So when that day comes where they're interested in taking their LinkedIn strategy to the next level, they're going to think of me. And just because someone tells you that you should do something doesn't mean you should do it. I trust the sources of the real experts, not someone that has a lot of vanity metrics behind what they're doing, right? And a lot of people participate in engagement pods where they're liking for liking and commenting for commenting. So, and to the defense of the people that don't know this, it's hard for them to tell what's real and what's not anymore. Just like
Yeah.
Instagram, which is mostly fake. I mean, people don't realize that there are companies that just, they follow, they like, there's comment bots, there's fake profiles, and you see that same thing going on LinkedIn, because everybody wants that recognition. Everybody wants that visibility, so they will do whatever it takes to get it. So I still take that long game approach. I just eclipsed 31,000 followers on LinkedIn, and everyone's like, "Oh my God." Like, well, yeah, but that's almost 13 years of consistency, right? So it's
Yep.
see the glory, but they don't know the story. So, but also when you're on the platform, going back to something that my mom always told me as a kid, treat others the way that you would want to be treated, right? You know, does it feel good to be pitch slapped by someone? So, you get those 18 paragraph long drunkalog verbal vomit messages that you delete right away. So why would you send that to someone, right? So it always do things the way that you would want someone to do them in response to you. So message people the way that you would want to be messaged, connect with people the way that you would want to be connected with, produce content the same way that you appreciate other people's content that's leaving you better. So it's almost looking at things which what I call from the passenger side perspective, the PSP, where most people are looking at from the DSP, which is the driver side perspective, which is our ego. And if your ego is so big that you can't fit in the doorway in front of you, then you got to check it right there and you got to start humanizing yourself and realizing that it's your job to serve and to leave people better, which is going to bring them closer. But if you do the other stuff, it's going to push them further away.
It's interesting because you mentioned a couple of different pieces there that reminded me of Ted Lasso. And just in like the authenticity of what you're bringing to the table. So, are there traits of Ted Lasso's leadership style that you find important for you or for others that you work with, or is authenticity the biggie?
Well, I think authenticity, but I would say being truthful and sharing lessons in story kind of brand relatability. And I think one of my favorite scenes was the dart scene where with him going against Rupert and basically, totally hosed him and he goes, "Oh, I forgot I was right-handed," right? So, and he was sharing the story about how, he was asked the question, have you ever played darts before? And he shared this kind of long-winded answer that, every Saturday afternoon, him and his dad would go to the local sports bar, and for hours on end, from the time he was 12 until his father passed away, they played darts. And so my if my wife was on here, she would agree, but we're like the way that we I would say explain things. She's very short, direct to the answer. I'm direct, but I paint a picture, right? I'm a storyteller. So when you not only show up very genuinely and authentically, but when you can paint a picture with your words, right? When you can really bring people into that story. So what I always tell people is when you're crafting a post on LinkedIn and you're really trying to get a significant point across, get as detailed as possible. Now, I'm not telling you to set the stage for every aspect, but make sure when you're reading it back before you hit post, is it going to create some sort of imagery in that person's mind that's going to make them feel like they're right there in that moment with you? And I did this the other day when I got pitch slapped in a connection request. And the guy even said it in the note, you've been randomly selected to be my unsolicited connection today. Congratulations, Scott, which I thought was just completely just out of bounds. And that's the type of people we don't need on LinkedIn. And, I took a screenshot of it, I blurred out his name, and I posted about it. And I kind of shared, the story behind this. And it triggered a lot of people in a positive way where they were sharing those experiences. So I think outside of being just genuine, authentic, humanizing yourself where you're looking at people on that eye to eye level instead of looking down upon them. And I think using that Rupert and Ted Lasso example, Rupert would look down on people, right? He liked people making feel like they were this big. Where Ted, obviously being the manager of that club, could have did the same thing, but he always liked to relate himself. And again, then things kind of transpire the way that they did, and people appreciate relatability over how great someone may be or the things that they accomplished at the end of the day.
I think that's awesome. Just another one, Ted. We talked about a lot of the traits, authenticity and consistency. Another big aspect of Ted Lasso was around resiliency. The ability to bounce back, and we saw that through with many characters in the show. If you read anything about Scott Aaron, I think you see that you've had some resiliency in your life. Is that something that Were you born with resiliency? I mean, did you always just have this bounce back kind of way of getting through things? Or can you talk a little bit about that, a little bit about your story around that?
Yeah, I was that prototypical like easygoing kind of doormat type of friend where I just wanted to be liked. So if it required me being the butt of the jokes, I would. And my parents fought a lot of my battles for me. My mom, she was just, that prototypical overbearing Jewish mother that, just wanted to do everything for her kid. I mean, she still tries to, even though I'm 45, but she can try and I appreciate it. Um, but I think it wasn't until I was 18 going on 19 and my father ended up getting incarcerated for 2.5 years that kind of brought me into the business world where I had to go to school full time and work full time running our family business. That's when I got my first taste of resiliency, but very unconsciously. I didn't know I was being resilient. I just knew that I had to step up as the obviously the man of the house at that time, with my dad being away, to kind of take the baton and run with it. And I think foundationally that shifted my internal DNA because I realized at that moment, no matter how big the moment may be, or no matter how challenging the moment may be, as long as I'm moving forward through it, I'm going to come out better on the other side of it, no matter how long that takes. And I've been through personal bankruptcy. I've been through 2 divorces. I've lost a house. I've had a lot of stuff that a lot of people would look at the resume and they're like, how's this guy still standing? Well, it's that, glass half full versus half empty theory. I never see something as too challenging because there's a solution for every problem. Even going back to a year ago, March of 2023, my father's diagnosed with one of the rarest forms of brain cancer out there, type large B cell intravascular lymphoma, which is a cancer of the blood cells in your brain. And he beat it. He's in remission. He just gave a keynote yesterday at a Cancer Foundation event that we all went to. But even that, he took that head on. And I learned a lot of those resiliency traits from him. Even when he went to prison, he could have just like packed it in and said, my life's over. But he grinned and bear it. He became the personal trainer, to a lot of the guys that were in there. He also did Shabbat services every Friday. They called him rabbi, for some of the Jewish guys that were in there. So you make the most of what is being dealt to you. And that's the thing. It's not about bluffing your hand. Is not every hand you're going to be dealt is going to look good, but there's a way to play it where, again, it could work in your favor in the end.
Nice. Um, that triggers so much, but I know we've got to wrap up. So I will ask one final question. What is one of your leadership rules? And then with that, if you want to tell folks where they can find you as well.
So myself and my wife, I would say through and through, one of our core foundations as far as leadership, because we run a mastermind, we have group programs, it's leaving people better and giving people hope. Because the fact of the matter, I don't care how wealthy someone is or how much money they're making. If they're not doing it in a way where it's leaving those around them better, does it really feel good at the end of the day? And could we be making more money? Absolutely. We will. I mean, we're always trending up, but we're doing it in a way that feels good to us because we know that we're leaving so many of the lives around us and the businesses around us better. And as leaders, there's nothing that feels better. Hearing those words of affirmation, talking about love languages, it just doesn't have to be with the partner that you're with. It could be the people that you lead, hearing from them how much you've changed their life. Their business would not be where it is if it wasn't for them. Nothing feels better. And the best way to connect with me, obviously, is LinkedIn. You can find me on there. You can find me on all the socials, or my website, scottaaron.net.
Awesome. Well, we super appreciate you joining us today. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
And
Scott. I appreciate it. Yeah.
yeah, and grateful to have you guys on my show. And Looking forward to having all my listeners, hear the two of you, and just really appreciate the both of you and everything that you're doing and for writing the book, and just keep leading like Lasso.
Preach.